Matt, thanks for doing this. My name is Eric Stahl. I am a Buchholz Fellow with the Committee of 70. Thank you so much for joining us. You are the current District Attorney of Bucks County.
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, welcome. Just to get right into it, the last few decades have seen a lot of innovation in the prosecutors' offices in Pennsylvania, in Bucks, across the nation. So where or whom, should I ask, do you look for new ideas or ways to improve your office? Where are you looking?
There's really no limit to that, Eric.
Yeah.
I look obviously to my neighbors that are similarly situated. So that would be the Southeast, whether that's Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, or Philadelphia. But we as prosecutors, we belong to a very unique association, and that is the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association. There's a great marketplace of ideas there. Every time we get together, excuse me, I learn something new, and I drive my coworkers crazy because I bring a lot of new innovations back. But I also subscribe to a couple of listservs all across the country because certainly I don't have the patent on any of the ideas that we currently employ to make sure that justice is tailored to the individual. I think, as you pointed out, in the past couple of decades, that prosecution has really evolved, and that's something that we have an obligation to keep up with. So if I can learn something from somebody clear across the country or right in my next door, my back door, that's what I'm obligated to do.
So mental health court is kind of one of those innovations. Can you kind of update us on the status of where that is?
Yes, actually, I'm very proud and privileged to be able to do that with you, Eric. This is something that we've been driving towards in Bucks County for quite a while. But as you know, in any big government organization, there's a lot of inertia. You have to fight that inertia, and you have to keep pushing constantly. That's not something that I'm afraid to do. I'm not a shy person, especially if it's a cause I believe in. So I would say a couple of years ago, I enlisted the Quattrone Center for Criminal Justice at Penn Law School to engage with us in my office and author a report on the efficacy and the value of mental health court in Bucks County, because we didn't have one. They were fantastic partners. They really dug deep. They explored all the things that we do well, but in a piecemeal fashion in Bucks County. And then they made some incredibly on-point recommendations for how we could advance the ball. And I used that report as a springboard to urge some of the other stakeholders in Bucks County forward and say, hey, there really is no reason for us not to be engaging in this mental health court process more affirmatively and more quickly. I would also, unfortunately, give credit where it's due, but it arose out of a negative situation that we had in our jail, in which a spotlight was shown on a young lady that was in the jail that maybe never needed to be in the first place, but there were no other alternatives. And because of that served as a fulcrum to really lever the process forward. And the stakeholders all realized we need to get going on this. So I'm sure you've gathered this already, Eric, but I am a huge proponent of mental health court and many specialty courts, because I think that justice needs to be individually tailored to the person that we're dealing with that's in front of us.
Right. Yeah. The Quattrone Center, near and dear to my heart. I worked with them when I was in law school.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things they're really excited about, they push conviction integrity units as another innovation. District attorneys have this power that I think pretty much otherwise is reserved to governors and presidents to look back and kind of consider past convictions and look at evidence. Do you, as a prosecutor, as a district attorney, do you feel that you have a responsibility to ensure that past convictions made by your office are correct, even those made before you were the DA?
Yes, no, unequivocally. And to put my money where my mouth is, I don't have a conviction integrity unit per se. I know that is I don't want to call it fashionable or trendy because that would be understating it, but it is something that we take very seriously. And you can't say, well, that's not my responsibility because it didn't happen on my watch. I think that we are stewards of justice, especially as a sitting district attorney. And to give you an example of practicing what I preached, Eric, I currently, as the district attorney, saw a case in which a guy was convicted of double homicide, was on death row, and it came to my attention that there was some discrepancy in whether or not the defense knew about some DNA evidence that existed that had been tested, but the results were not known. And that report came in after he was convicted. I think that his attorney knew that the report was pending, but not that the results had come in afterwards. And so I said, you know what, we could play this out and let the case go all the way up and come all the way down. That didn't seem right to me. I'm a big believer in Alexander the Great and smashing the Gordian knot, shattering it in a million pieces. And I said, this guy deserves a new trial because I don't know that the outcome would have been different, but he certainly should have had this weapon in his arsenal to defend himself. And so, sua sponte, without any court order, I said, you're getting a new trial.
Mhm.
That's where it sits now. We're still, unfortunately, engaged in appeal land on this issue or that, but he's going to have a new trial. And that's exactly what he deserves. And we'll see what the outcome is.
So why not have a dedicated unit or somebody formally assigned to be an, conviction integrity, conviction review individual? I mean, Center County has a quarter of the population of Bucks. They have an assigned ADA. Chester has one, Philadelphia is different, different magnitude. They have one. What's your thinking just in why do you prefer not to have one?
I don't prefer not to. I'm not opposed to it. It's something that we're still exploring. I think that it needs to be very thoughtfully crafted. I know that the Attorney General's office has a conviction integrity unit now, and having been involved in that ongoing process with them, I actually am one of the sitting district attorneys that could review a review if they decided to do a conviction integrity review. We've had now a couple of applications that have been referred to the Attorney General's office for review of our cases, and we're completely in accord with that. I would never stand in somebody's way to have their conviction reviewed if they feel that they were falsely convicted. Even one is too many. As far as setting one up in my own shop, that's always on the table, Eric. But at the moment, we cooperate with the Attorney General's process, and they have at least some jurisdiction all across the state with our cooperation.
Yeah, I know that a year ago they made the announcement of the statewide, and I hadn't heard a lot of news about it since. So I'm happy to hear that that's moving along.
I can tell you, I know of at least one case specifically from Bucks County that they've chosen to review. They have to ask our permission to review it. And of course, the answer is yes. We agreed that they could review that case.
Got it. So line prosecutors, they have a lot of latitude. They can craft charges and request certain sentences. You have 40 plus ADAs.
That's right.
And they're all making decisions. How do you exercise your oversight? What type of cases get to your desk? What type of decisions?
So I think that there's an ethos that needs to be broadcast all the way down through your ranks. And the only way to do that, Eric, is to lead from the front. So we have routine management meetings, of course, but we also have pretty routine staff meetings to the extent that COVID would permit that. But we're getting back into the flow there of regular court and regular staff meetings. And I always start out by saying to every one of my 42 assistant DAs, the day that a person comes to court, whether that's as a victim, a witness, a juror, or certainly as a defendant, that's probably one of the scariest days of their lives.
Sometimes for their attorney too.
Yes, that's for their attorney too, I guess. But my point is we need to treat everybody with dignity and respect. We have to look at the whole person. This is not a cookie cutout, a cardboard cutout. What am I thinking of? Cookie cutter, cardboard cutout of a person. This is a real person with a real backstory. And I know that you're trying to get through your stack of cases, but we need to treat each person with dignity and respect, and let's try to tailor their justice to their circumstance. Don't get me wrong, Eric. I believe that we have an obligation to our victims and to the community that we have to protect as well. But that includes the people that are on the defendant side, especially. And so, what I have observed since I've been the district attorney is my assistant DAs are very thoughtful. If a case bothers them, and I'll give you an example, we recently through COVID went through racial equity training. This is not mandated by the county; it was mandated by me, actually. I saw two concrete examples in which an ADA brought a case through management and ultimately to me, where they felt that race was a factor in how a person was treated. And had it been before this racial equity training, which was not a one-off, it was a process in my office, I think that those cases probably would have been assembly line justice, pipeline, boiled down to the least common denominator, like almost a no harm, no foul, give a person a summary to go away. It was not right, it was not proper, and it didn't happen on our watch. So I know that's anecdotal, Eric, but that's something that I'm incredibly proud of, because now I've seen the fruits of our training, of our labors to try to get people to look at somebody as an individual. And so you can probably tell by now I'm an optimist. I believe in the glass is half full, but I do see a change in our young ADAs and in the ethos in my office, which is something I'm very, very proud of.
That was going to be my next question, really, is with all that latitude, with all the caseload that I know, especially young ADAs face, how do you make sure bias doesn't get into their decisions? How does it make sure that you separate that from decision making and make sure everybody's treated equally?
So there's certainly a cultural aspect to it. When I say that, I mean an office culture. My assistant DAs understand how important this is to me. My management team understands how important this is to me. And I'll tell you, though I've been the DA almost 5 years now, when I first became the DA, I said, we're going to take a look at some of these things. We're going to look at some of our processes critically. And I never believed that it was fair to treat somebody differently because they had less money or less access than somebody that could pay for better representation or pay for a shortened ARD, for example. So one of the first things we did as a management team was create more diversionary opportunities for people and not have their ability to pay to ever be a barrier to equal justice. And if you are setting those benchmarks, resetting those benchmarks from the top, it can't help but to have a cultural change in how your assistant DAs who are taking their lead from the top are handling their cases day to day. There is more diversion of cases. There are more specialty courts for which defendants can be diverted in my office now than ever. And to give you the concrete, because people are always looking for stats to back up what is he really speaking the truth. So when I started as DA, we prosecuted about 10,000 cases, which for Bucks County, that's a good amount. We're now down to about 6,000 prosecutions a year. And before everybody worries that they're not being protected, that's not the case at all. What we're doing, Eric, is we're being more discriminating, meaning we're diverting many, many, many more cases into treatment, like mental health or substance use disorder treatment. We're diverting people into second chance courts, veterans courts, things, youthful offender courts, because we want to really tailor justice. The goal, frankly, is not only protection of the community, but if we're successful, I never want to see these people again. I think that's a win for everybody, even just on a purely pragmatic standpoint.
So yeah, I saw the numbers I could find were 2019, 18% of criminal cases through your office were processed through what the court called diversionary disposition. And I just wanted, is that a number that you think is, you want to be higher? Is that, what do you think is kind of the right amount? Are you trying to increase that? How should Bucks County residents understand that number?
Well, that's a great question. I think one of the things that number is missing, Eric,
I'm sure.
is that doesn't account for the cases we're diverting that don't even ever make it up to our level of the Court of Common Pleas. We have district court diversion programs for a lot of first-time offenders now. That's a case you would never even see in the statistics.
Mhm.
So I'd love to get credit for that if we're being judged on that. But really, the point is, especially when it comes to treatment courts, I want people to have access to treatment as quickly as possible. If somebody, especially if they're hooked on a harder drug other than marijuana, really needs treatment and they have to wait the 6 months from the day they're arrested until the day that they get to big court, the common pleas court, there's a lot of bad outcomes that can happen before they get to that treatment option. And I don't want any of those to occur, whether that be a fatal overdose or a relapse or them committing more crimes. They're all terrible outcomes. So what I want to have happen, and what we are doing all across Bucks County now, is allowing you treatment that's cheaper, quicker, and closer to you than ever before. And my goal is, if I can get a person hooked up with treatment at the earliest possible time, we'll never see that case. So from a practical standpoint, that's one less case that my ADAs have to focus on so that they can focus on, unfortunately, the rapes, the robberies, the murders, the child abuse cases. And B, this person is connected with treatment. Maybe we'll never see that person again. So they themselves can't commit rapes and robberies and murders and burglaries and what all have you, those types of crimes that are fueled by their need to perpetuate their substance use disorder.
The final question, because you've been generous with your time. From what I can tell, during your tenure, there's been at least 2 instances where law enforcement shot someone in Bucks County. And what happens in your office when that occurs? And do you feel like it's your responsibility as the DA to supervise and regulate police officers? I know, I compare your situation to Philadelphia. There's one police department in Philadelphia, and you've got 40, 50 police departments in Bucks County. So what is your job as DA, in relation to your police departments?
So let me start off by saying that even one officer involved shooting is too many.
Mhm.
It of course is a terrible tragedy anytime it occurs, and I can recall those cases very vividly because I do have and I take on the responsibility of reviewing each of those cases myself, and they're difficult cases. But as far as where my responsibility for oversight extends, as you know, Pennsylvania is a commonwealth, so that government boils down to its lowest form, which is each municipality serves as it governs its own police force. That's not a pass the buck statement, Eric, but what we have done in Bucks County, because we take this and other uses of force so seriously, not just in light of what happened to George Floyd and his murder, but because of, frankly, the perception, the way the police are perceived generally nowadays. So, and it's 39 police chiefs and I got together in a collaborative way and said, we need to come up with a unified best practices for officer involved use of force. And they could have said no.
Mhm.
They did not have an obligation. I hate to say it like a parent to a child, but I'm not the boss of you. But they went along with it. And that is a credit to them. Nobody's perfect and no police agency is perfect. But the fact that they went along, not only went along with the concept, but put out a best practices on police use of force is very impressive. I was proud to be a part of it. Of course, I read it and vetted it with a critical eye and added some things. But that is available for anybody that wishes to take a look at. And it was just not made up pie in the sky. It's to Pennsylvania accredited standards of best practices and the national standards, accredited standards, best practices. It's a document that I'm very proud of, and I think it speaks directly to when police can and can't use force, their obligation to intervene when a fellow officer is abusing force, their duty to report, to many of those factors that are on the tip of everybody's mind right now.
And I'm sorry, because I have to follow up. Have you had the opportunity? Have you used it? Have you had to, refer to it in any particular matter that you've overseen?
Thank God, not yet.
Yeah.
Thank God, not yet. But it is there when I need it.
Mhm.
To this point, anytime I've had to review an officer-involved shooting, it's been with that individual department's use of force manual and policy. But also, that's not the be-all, end-all. I mean, I myself am the judge there, and I would use the accredited standards in either instances. But now I have this extra invaluable tool at my disposal that all of these departments have agreed to allow to accept as a very, very high baseline for their use of force.
Got it. Well, Matt, thank you so much for talking to us today. Thank you for giving your time so generously, and I wish you luck coming up.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity being on here today with you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, take care. Be safe.
You too.